So forgetful the last couple of weeks. I'm supposed to welcome you here today. Great to see you. Okay, and I totally forgot. So I'm just going to go straight to saying, let's worship together. Can you stand with me right now? And the worship band's going to lead us in some music. Thank you so much.
Every battle, through every heartbreak, through every circumstance, I believe that you are my fortress, you are my portion, you are my hiding place. I believe you are the way, the truth, the light. I believe you are the way, the truth, the light. I believe through every blessing, through every promise, through every breath I take. I believe that you are provider, you are protector, you are the one I love. And I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. It's a new horizon. It's a new horizon. And I'm set on you. And you meet me here today with mercies that are new. And all my fears and doubts, they can all come true, because they can't stay long when I'm here with you. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you meet me here today with mercies that are new. And all my fears and doubts, they can all come true, because they can't stay long when I believe that you are the way, the truth, the light. I believe you are the way, the truth, the light. I can sing it again, the way, the truth, the light. I believe you are the way, the truth, the light. I believe you are. Again, welcome to Faith Avenue Church. We're just so glad to have you here today to worship with us and to be in community. So why don't you take a few moments to just greet the person next to you or wave across the pews, see faces that are familiar. exalt you. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. Sing, you are my God. You are my God. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. You are my God. You are my God. Sing, my hiding place. In my hiding place, my safe refuge, my treasure, Lord, you are my friend and King, anointed one, most holy. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. You are my God. You are my God. Because you're with me. Because you're with me. Because you're with me. Because you're with me. Whom shall I fear? I will not fear. My hiding, you're my hiding place, my safe refuge, my treasure, Lord, you are my friend and King, anointed one, most holy. You're my hiding place, my safe refuge, my treasure, Lord, you are my friend and King, anointed one, most holy. Can we sing it again? You're my hiding place, my safe refuge, my treasure, Lord, you are my friend and King, anointed one, most holy. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. I will exalt you. You are my God.
I'm going to lead us in communion together. So there are a lot of different ways that different traditions practice communion, and so I'm going to walk us through the steps. And in our church, anyone and everyone, whomever or age or whatever, you're all welcome. It's something that we want you to feel welcome to, but of course you're not obligated to. It's just an invitation. So communion is a spiritual practice like prayer, and it's something we do to connect with God. The bread and the cup represent Jesus' body and blood on the cross. And when we remember his death, we invite and accept this death into our own bodies. Jesus' death on the cross marked the end of something old and the beginning of something new. And before we come and get the elements, which are going to be right here, let's take a moment of preparation to investigate our own hearts and see if there's anything in us which needs help dying. We can commit that thing to God and ask for help in releasing it. So let's take a moment together. We're going to sing one last song together, and then all of us, whoever would like to, can just come up during that song to the front and receive one of these elements from Tim and Jessica. And just to let you know what you're seeing up there, the cup and the bread that look, the cup and the tortilla that look more regular, that's regular wine and regular tortilla. And then the little pre-packaged ones are grape juice and a gluten-free wafer. And if you pick one of those, as soon as you get to your seat, start trying to open it because they are sticky. And whatever one you choose, just hold on to it and we'll take them together after we all have them. So we're going to do the next song and you can choose when to come up.
I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Lord, now indeed I find thy power and thine alone can change the leper's spots and melt the heart of stone. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. And when before the throne I stand in him complete, Jesus died my soul to save, my lips shall still repeat, and Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead.
Okay. So let's take the bread product together. And as we hold it, let's pray in our hearts. Jesus, though you were broken, you are our healer. In whatever amount I'm capable of today, I receive your healing as I take this bread. And then we'll take the bread together. Now hold the cup, and we will pray. Jesus, through the spilling of your blood, you bring new life to all of creation. Make me new today as I drink this cup. And we'll drink the cup together. Thanks for taking part in this special practice with me today. And we're going to continue our focus on death and resurrection as we continue our service.
Hello, y'all. And we are a y'all. I'm not just getting in touch with my inner redneck there, but I say that word on purpose because we're a community and not a bunch of individuals. This month, actually, I'm so glad you're here today because this week actually is the beginning of a month of celebrating Easter for us. Today we're going to focus on death and Good Friday, the day that Jesus died. Next week is all about Holy Saturday and the waiting, that timing between death and resurrection. Then several weeks from now is Easter Sunday, and that's about new life and new beginnings. And then the last Sunday of this month is about Monday. It's about what happens after or because of Easter. Now, many churches and many people skip right over the whole death part of the Easter story, and they go right to the resurrection part. And I totally get that. I totally get that because that just seems like way more fun. There's flowers and angels and empty tombs and chocolate, lots and lots of chocolate. But resurrection can't happen without death. So today, let's have a cup of coffee at the Death Cafe. That's the title of this message, and it's on purpose, okay? Because death cafes actually exist. There are hundreds of them. Death cafes. In fact, there's one in Springfield and one in Corvallis where you can drink coffee and drink tea. And hey, Bobby, could you close the doors for me? Thank you. Where you can drink coffee and drink tea and have like honest, open conversations about death. You can check one out if you don't have something to do on like a Thursday night, okay? But let me talk about this topic of death for a while. And I want to start by talking about the denial of death. Our culture doesn't care too much for death. Mostly we try to ignore it, or we walk through our lives trying to deny it because it just seems to ruin our bliss. We go to great lengths, in fact, to deny the reality of death. About 6 months into the pandemic, a year and a half ago, I remember thinking, well, I've exhausted all the good shows on Netflix. I'm done with them already, and this pandemic's not over. What do I do? And so I started watching shows I wouldn't normally watch. And one of them was about this family in the Deep South that ran a funeral parlor. And it was fascinating. And my favorite episode was when some of the employees, and one particularly funny employee, went to a makeup class to learn how to put makeup on cadavers, on the corpses, on the dead people. And I remember thinking, this is insane. And they got really good at it. They got so good at putting makeup on dead bodies, it literally looked like the corpse could pop up out of the coffin at any moment and just go out for a night on the town. And I thought, this is crazy. We deny death even at a funeral. That's what's happening there. And in fact, we don't even call them funerals anymore. What do we call them? Celebrations of life. We don't even use the word death. And look at social media. You can get on anything on social media and see plenty of pictures about new babies and weddings and vacations, but you don't see a lot of funeral pictures, do you? We don't even like to talk about it. Do this. I tried it as an experiment, not for this message, just because it entered my mind, okay? But I thought, I'm just going to go to a normal lunch with a person, and before we get into talking about all the normal topics of life, I'm just going to bring up death. Do it. Look at the look on their faces when you start the conversation by saying, so, you going to get cremated? And the look on their faces when you start at lunch that way, it's priceless. You're welcome, okay? But death is something we really can't deny. There's a famous children's book, Everybody Poops. You probably have read it to your kids or grandkids. The sequel for adults should be Everybody Croaks, because both of those things are unpleasant, but they're true. I had a friend that wanted his kids so desperately to accept the reality of death at a young age that when they started asking for pets, he bought them sick and old animals he knew would die right away. This sounds like abuse, right? He's actually really funny. He's a great parent. Well, most of the time, evidently. Okay? And sure enough, they died, and he and his wife got to explain the reality of death to their kids. The Bible doesn't ignore it. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, I'll put this on the screen, says this: death is the destiny of every person. That is not a popular verse. If you ask somebody, what's the core verse of your life? They're not going to mention this. They're not going to get this tattooed on their arms, okay? But even though it's an unpleasant reality, it's true, and we need to accept the reality of our own death for several reasons. First of all, it helps us to grieve better. If people walk through their life in denial of death, they are not going to be good at grieving because death always catches them by surprise. So instead of yelling and screaming and ranting and weeping and hurting and feeling and gathering with other people during a time of grief, people that ignore the reality of death tend to isolate themselves and suppress their emotions. And they try to rush right through the grieving process in order to get to the happily ever after, which is a disaster for them later in life, emotionally and sometimes relationally. And if someone is grieving around these people who deny the existence of death, that's even worse. People that deny the reality of death say the most super unhelpful things to other people that are grieving. They'll go up to people that have just lost a loved one and say, it's okay, don't feel bad. They're in a better place. Well, that's super unhelpful. Or they'll say, well, I guess God needed another angel, so God took them from me. Okay, that's super unhelpful too. All of that is unhelpful because you're basically saying to the person, stop feeling sad because you're bumming me out. That's what you're saying. So accepting the reality of death helps us to walk through the process of grief ourselves, and it helps us to walk others through it. The second thing that accepting the reality of death does, it builds community. That seems like a weird statement, doesn't it? But it's true, and let me explain by talking about the emotion of disgust. Some really smart people got together, scientists, and wrote a book on the emotion of disgust. And they discovered that we humans feel disgust for 3 primary reasons. The first one has to do with food. We often feel disgust when it comes to food. You know that moment when you find a fingernail in your burrito? That, okay? In fact, you're feeling disgust right now just because I said that, all right? The second reason is socio-moral. It's the disgust people feel when they look at someone else and label them as bad, evil, vile, or wicked. And you feel instant disgust for them because they're a lower life form than you. It's not right, but that's how you feel. And the last one is mortality. When we see anything that reminds us of our own mortality and the vulnerability of our bodies, we feel disgust. So we feel disgusted when we see corpses, when we see open wounds, severed appendages, bad smells, deformities, bodily fluids. Watch one episode of Dr. Pimple Popper and you'll know what I'm talking about, okay? And because of this third reason for disgust, what we do is we end up pushing aside any people that remind us of our own mortality. So we end up distancing ourselves from the sick, from the aged, from the dying, from the disabled, from the hurting. And we try to surround ourselves with vibrant, young, happy, seemingly perfect people all the time. And our disgust for anyone who isn't perfect helps us to keep death our own dirty little secret. But when we accept our own mortality and the reality of death, we begin to accept people that used to disgust us. We accept people who are far from perfect, young, and vibrant. And we're not disgusted by them anymore because we can actually relate to them. We're all vulnerable. Everybody croaks. So accepting the reality of your own mortality actually helps you to accept more people and community is built. I know that sounds weird, but it's really true. Second thing I want to mention about death today is this. Jesus died. There's some people that think he just faked it up there. He died, okay? I want to put up Matthew chapter 27, verses 45 through 50, and this describes what we celebrate the Friday before Easter as Good Friday, the day that Jesus died. And it says this, "From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, 'Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani,' which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some people think this is the moment when Jesus became an atheist for a little bit. And then when some folks of those standing there heard this, they said, "Oh, he's calling for Elijah, a prophet that had died years ago." Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge, and he filled it with wine vinegar and put it on a staff and offered it to Jesus to drink. But the rest said, No, leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. And in verse 50, when it says he cried out again in the other gospel accounts, he said, "It is finished." And then he gave up his spirit. He died. These verses depict the moment Jesus died, but let's notice a few things. First of all, Jesus said two important things. "It is finished," and my God, why have you forsaken me?" Both of these are found in Psalm 22, an Old Testament book that would have been very famous at the time of Jesus. He would have been very familiar with it, as would all of the people that gathered around the cross. And Psalm 22 was often chanted or even sang. So it appears Jesus was singing himself towards death, which makes all kinds of sense. There is a national movement right now of musicians. They form what's called threshold choirs. If you haven't cried in a little while, if you just think, "Man, I haven't been in touch with my emotions. I can't remember the last time I wept." Google threshold choirs. They're talented musicians that gather together and they go into hospital rooms, homes, and hospice facilities, and they sing to people that are terminally ill. It is deeply moving, deeply moving. And people have discovered that music helps decrease people's pain and agitation and anxiety. So they sing these people towards their death. It's so beautiful. Death wasn't easy for Jesus. People think it was because he was the Son of God and all. It wasn't. His death was real. His blood was real. His pain was real. His fear was real. Jesus entered into every aspect of death, and he didn't have a stunt double go up on the cross for him. His death was awful, so evidently he started singing and sang himself towards death. And it's highly likely that the people gathered around the cross would have known Psalm 22 also and would have started chanting and singing those words with him, kind of like the first threshold choir. Second, notice this. Jesus died because he really lived. When you read about the life story of Jesus in the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the first thing that pops off the page is this. Jesus was fearless. He was a radical. He wasn't afraid to speak out against anybody and anything that oppressed people. So he confronted the religious establishments at the time. He brought teachings that were counter to what they were teaching. He broke all their rules. He gathered the outcasts and the outliers, people that they had shunned. And then he spoke out and confronted the Roman political machine. He took on himself the titles that Caesar had. Caesar was famously called the Son of a God and Savior and Lord. He was called all those things. And Jesus started being called those things. And that marked a revolution. He was announcing by taking these titles, there's a new king in town, and it's not Caesar. It's me. And that was daring. It got him killed. When you wonder, why did Jesus have to die on the cross? There's several answers to that, but a big one is this. He died because he was an enemy of the state, because he was a threat to the religious and political regimes of the time. Most of us right now are living such safe lives. Our guardian angels are bored out of their minds. They're probably just playing Wordle, okay? Jesus didn't live like that. Jesus did not avoid risk. And if we want to live like Jesus, it probably won't get us killed, okay? We won't die in our culture if we live like Jesus, but it will involve risk. We'll have to risk being ridiculed, misunderstood, or persecuted even. Who knows what else? It won't be easy, but we'll be fully alive. I'm going to put up one of my favorite quotes again, and I've used this several times because I want you to remember it, actually. It's on purpose. And the ancient poet, mystic and poet, Rumi says this: live where you fear to live, destroy your reputation, and be notorious. That's exactly how Jesus lived his life. He didn't let fear dictate his life. He lived where most people would fear to live, and he destroyed his reputation. He was notorious. And lastly, knowing Jesus died means this, that our God is not an antiseptic God that's unfamiliar with the messy, painful, awful parts of life. He's familiar with all of that. In 1967, Johnny Cash, who I know, I'm dating myself, some of you don't know him, but a famous musician, he had had the darkest year of his life. His life was a complete and utter mess, and he was done. And so he wandered back into a cave called Nickajack Cave. And if you're familiar with this cave, the caverns can go actually for miles. And he had a lantern, and his plan was, I'm going to walk back in this cave until my battery goes out, and I'm going to lay down and die. Of hypothermia, hunger, whatever, I don't care. I'm just going to die. I'm done. And he did it. He got all the way to the back of this cave. His lantern went out. And there in the inky darkness, he says, I heard a voice, and somehow I knew it was God. It wasn't audible, but I knew someone was speaking to me. And it said these words to me: I am still here. Those words. I am still here. And it was a turning point of his life. And I'm so glad, because then he went on to record the Nine Inch Nails song, Hurt. Oh my, Google that too. In our deepest pits of despair, I believe to everyone, God kind of whispers the same words to us. I'm still here. I've been through darkness. I've even been through death. So you can trust that I will walk you through your deepest pit of darkness and despair, because he's familiar with pain and fear and even death. Those things don't scare our God away. That's so great. And the last thing I want to mention about death, I'll close with this, is the beauty in death. What another weird statement to say there's beauty in death. There's totally beauty in death. Look what the Apostle Paul wrote to a church in Philippi, and he wrote this, and it's a very famous verse in chapter 1. To live is Christ, to die is gain. I remember as a young kid when I first met the Lord and started reading the Bible, I read that verse and I thought, well, this guy's nuts. Dying isn't gain. There's nothing of gain. And later on, I started getting the understanding of this verse that you probably have right now. Oh, of course, to die is gain, because that means we get to be in paradise with our tears wiped away forever, face to face with our Lord. That sounds great. So that must be what he's talking about. And that's true. I think that's what Paul was talking about. But maybe the gain that's talked about there isn't just for the next life. Maybe it can be experienced in this life too. I read a book a couple of years, and again, I've told you about this, and it knocked the wind out of me. Honestly, it was the kind of book where I could read a couple of pages, then I have to put it down and go, oh, I got to think on that for a while. And it was called When Breath Becomes Air. And again, if you haven't cried in a while, buy this book. It's the story of this brilliant surgeon, and he was at Stanford Medical Center, and he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And when you're as brilliant as he is, he knew he was going to die. There was no treatment for what he had. So he wrote this book to chronicle his journey to death. And it's unbelievable. And one of the things that he said that I'll never forget, I'll put this on the screen, he says, the face of death is unsettling, but there's no other way to live. What an amazing thing to say, and it's so true, because think about it. The people that you've met that know they are dying are the people that are most fully alive, because they don't view this world as just a waiting room for the next life. No, they want to live every moment. They want to carpe the heck out of every diem. They really do. One of my favorite authors got in an accident once, and he wrote about it. And he was wakeboarding, which if you've ever done that, you can hurt your head easy in wakeboarding. Water's hard when you hit it hard enough. It feels like cement. And he hit his head so hard he was severely concussed and knocked unconscious. And he said, when I regained my consciousness, I was really in it. I was really in the now. I was present in my life like never before. Every detail of my life felt like it was suddenly on fire. At one point, he stood and he looked at his wife and his kids and his house and his surroundings, and he said, because he didn't know, he lost a lot of his memory at the time he regained it, and he goes, "This is my life? I get to spend my life with this woman? Are you kidding me? And these kids, they're the most exotic creatures I've ever seen. This is incredible." And later on, he looked at his hand. He said, while my friend was visiting me, my friend recounted the story, he looked at his own hand for an uncomfortable amount of time, just stared at it. And finally, he looks to his friend and goes, "Isn't this amazing? Look." He started like moving his hand, like it can move and grab things. It's incredible. I have opposable thumbs. And then he said, I ate a burrito, and it was like I'd never tasted one before, but somehow in this state, I could taste all of the spices and recognize them all at once, like an explosion in my mouth. Life seemed to be charged with splendor for him. And I tell you this story for one reason, and I hope you can hear me. Realizing you're going to die doesn't give you life. Realizing you're going to die gives you to the life you actually already have. Do you get the difference? I'm not going to repeat myself because I know that some of you might have got it in a brain fog for a second. I want you to hear this. Realizing you're going to die doesn't give you life. Realizing you're going to die gives you to the life you already have, much like the concussion did for this author. This is why when singer Warren Zevon, and I am so dating myself, does anybody in here even know who Warren Zevon is? He wrote Werewolves in London, ladies and gentlemen, and a lot of other songs. He was brilliant. Well, he got diagnosed with terminal cancer, and then he wrote about Keep Me in Your Heart for a While. If you want to cry again, Google the song Keep Me in Your Heart for a While. He wrote about his own death, okay? But he got asked to be on the on the David Letterman show right after this diagnosis. And David Letterman knew about the diagnosis. And it took a lot of courage for Letterman to do this, but he asked Warren, he goes, "Warren, because of your condition, is there something you know about life that maybe I don't?" And Warren's answer was so brilliant. I'll put it on the screen. He says, "Well, I know how much you're supposed to enjoy every sandwich." That's what he wrote. That is so brilliant. So to die certainly is gain because of the next life, but to know you're dying is gain for this life because it gives you to the life you already have that maybe you've taken for granted. Joel's going to come up and lead us in a spiritual practice, but as he comes up, I want to show you a painting, and it's by a famous street artist, though you might not have heard of him. His name's Roan, short for Tyrone, and he does the most incredible art. Patrick, can we put this up? I hope it shows up on the screen. This should be of a woman's face. Yeah. You'll notice the building, and you can come up closer if you want to see it or look at the computer later. You'll notice the building is condemned, it's decrepit, it's neglected. He does all of his art in settings like this because he said to know that this art is temporary makes it seem more important and more special. And I think the same is true of our life here on earth. When we embrace our own mortality and know that our time on this planet is temporary, it's not going to last that long, it makes it more important and more special. And somehow, instead of being less alive, we're more fully alive. Joel, go ahead.
Oh, there we go. Thanks, Pete. So I'd like to invite you to do a little practice of this with me. It is a challenge to find ways to incorporate things we talk about on a weekly basis just into your normal life. But I have a great one for you today. So what I'm going to do is lead you through a few statements as we kind of pray and think about these things in a conversational way with God. And what I was thinking about as far as how do we relate this idea of death to ourselves every day. I heard a quote not long ago that has stuck with me that says, for the Christian, death is not annihilation, it is consummation. That we are headed towards something. What are we dying to? What are we being consummated into? Nothing short of complete union and connection with God, what we were created for. So there are all these things that happen to us in life, all these things we go through, and they cause fear and anxiety and all this stuff, and it triggers a survival response. And if we are not aware of it, what happens is we end up going through life trying to stay alive and not really living. And so instead, the practice then for us is to embrace all of these moments of death where we realize, I feel like this is going to kill me in some small way, but I'm choosing to let it go in exchange for receiving this union with God, which is trust and our confidence in God. That's our faith. So this practice just walks us through some of these big ideas and thoughts. And I thought, this is not a light thing to do. I have been praying this prayer for the last 5 or 6 weeks and inviting other people to do it with me. In fact, if this is meaningful for you to do, I actually have a recording of myself leading people through it if it's something that you'd like to have so that you could do it on your own and just kind of be walked through the prayer. But I'll do it with us today. And I also thought if there's something particular that just stands out to you as we do this, I asked Melissa and Jimmy if they'd be available for a few moments after the service. If there's something that really stands out to you, like, oh man, this is causing fear, this is causing anxiety, this is causing this survival response in me, and I just want to let it go. I invite you, if you don't have someone else with you that you would just want to say, let's pray about this together, come and pray with Melissa or Jimmy, and then we'll move on with our day. So would you, if you're willing, would you close your eyes with me? First, what I'd like you to do is, with me, just begin to welcome everything that might come to you today, because we know that everything that comes to us, God is able to use for our healing. So take a moment and view your day, what has and what will happen, and just make room and welcome for it. We don't have to be afraid. Specifically, I invite you to welcome all thoughts, all the feelings, all the emotions, every person, every situation, and every condition. We welcome these, God. And now some specific things that we might need to just let go of. So first, God, today we let go of, we die to this desire that we have for power and control over things that we cannot control. And next, we let go of, we die to our desire for the affection that we want that we don't always get, the esteem that we want that is not given to us, for the approval from other people, or just the pleasure that we wish we had. We let go of these things, God. God, if there are things that have caused us to respond and to live out of a survival type of mode, of just trying to keep our own sense of security and to keep everything else at bay, we let go of our desire for security and for survival. We release it to you, Lord. As we let go of these things, God, we at the same time open ourselves to you, to your love, to your presence with us, and to your actions within our hearts. We welcome you today, God. Amen.
Is my mic still on? There it is, yeah. I'm going to dismiss you in just a second, but I want to remind you that we have our table talks in the other room, and there's goodies, because Isaac brought goodies today, so there's goodies to be had, and they're kind of a pre-lunch. Warm yourself up for lunch. And then I do want to announce that the blood drive's still going. You can sign up for that. And that kids' classes, we're trying desperately to get families with young kids back. They seem to be the last ones to come aboard. And we're trying to start the kids' classes. There will be kids' classes for sure the next 2 weeks. Thank you for your patience on that so much. I want to dismiss this in kind of an odd way because it was an odd sermon, okay? Can you say these words with me as we leave? To live is Christ, to die is gain. To live is Christ, to die is gain. Have a great week.